It's a warm welcome back to the weekend football podcast here at Matchbook. Delighted to be joined, as ever, the top right of your screen, if you're watching us now live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, Mr. Adrian Clarke, and on the bottom of our screen, Mr. Mark O'Hare. Adrian, come to you first of all. East Anglian double last week was one of your best bets. Not your best bet. Your best bet, let's call it as it is, was Sheffield United. Early goals there to Wolves, but you had a kind of a good enough weekend. You also called BTDS in the Chelsea game, plenty of goals in the Liverpool game, but not a bad one, sir.
Yeah, not bad at all. Yeah, no, I was chuffed with the East Anglian double. Just felt that their opponents were there for the taking. But yeah, not a bad week. Chelsea, I think, were always going to win, but in a free-flowing game, and that's how it turned out.
Mark O'Hare, your best bet. We got to talk about it. I was watching this game on Flash Score, of course. How wasn't there not goals in that game? I mean, the opening goal after 3 minutes was for Plymouth, wasn't it? And we thought we were nearly kind of quits in at that stage.
I think when you see an early goal go in and you're backing overs, you think you're already cashing that bet.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. Plymouth's goalkeeper had a man of the match performance. Blackpool had 18 attempts, couldn't get through them. So it's how it goes sometimes. Early season can be tricky. I think we did pretty well in our analysis of the Premier League. It's just a shame that everything else I put up kind of fell down elsewhere. So I guess that's how it goes sometimes.
And Adrian, we'll get to Liverpool in a second, but plenty of goals at Anfield as well, as we predicted. That was a bit of a cracker against Leeds.
What a game. Yeah, I mean, the adventure of Leeds United was spectacular. But even though Liverpool got the 3 points, I do think that performance exposed frailties. And we'll get to the Chelsea game very shortly. But Liverpool at the back right now, not in a good place.
Yeah, Adrian tipped us off there. So what we're covering today, we're going to do Chelsea versus Liverpool, the lead-off game of the weekend. We will then double back to Monday night for Wolves versus Manchester City, Southampton against Tottenham, Manchester United and Crystal Palace. A lot of EFL bets as ever with these two guys, and weekend best bets thereafter. Right, so let's not delay any longer, gentlemen. Let's move into Chelsea against Liverpool. Let's have a look at the odds currently at Matchbook, as you can see on screen right now. Chelsea, they're 3.34. 2.23 are Liverpool on the match odds. The draw is available at 3.82. Liverpool laying a quarter of a goal. So obviously Chelsea getting a quarter of a goal start there. 2.01 odds against. And the goal line is 3. That seems about right. Mark, let's talk about that first of all. This one just seems like it has to be goals. But then again, one of the last games we talked about it a couple of weeks ago that seemed to be scream goals was Bayern Munich and PSG. So we're not going to automatically just jump on this trap again. But even a flat 3 at the moment at odds against, surely got to be tempting you.
Yeah, that's moved up very so slightly in the week as well. I'm sure it was set at over 2 3/4 to begin with, which to me was the bet. As you say, it looks like it's screaming goals from the outset. Chelsea start on them defensively. Chilwell and Thiago Silva, we talked about them last week, might be available. Thiago Silva is still apparently adjusting to life in London. Chilwell supposedly near a full fitness now. But yeah, things aren't going to turn around defensively overnight. I think we saw that against Brighton as well. I didn't think anything massively changed there. I know particularly in the personnel, it was pretty much as you were last year. But I didn't think Chelsea were anything special against Brighton. I thought the final score flattered them quite a lot. I know the forward players will start to click sooner than later. Timo Werner, probably the highlight there, looks really sharp anyway after a long off season without having to go with Leipzig into the Champions League. But they'll be encouraged by Liverpool's defensive display against Leeds. I know Leeds scored with their 3 shots on target, but they posed plenty of problems. Hassled and harried them really well, got space in behind the fullbacks. They looked to attack that often and regularly, and it worked for them pretty well. So they made life comfortable for Liverpool in a way that I don't think many people will at Anfield. I think there is a bit of rustiness there about that defence too. Obviously, Van Dijk doesn't often make those kind of mistakes, but did this time around. And I thought it was quite interesting, actually. If you go back to the start of the last season, Liverpool only kept 2 clean sheets in their first 15 games. 13 of those featured both sides scoring. So perhaps it takes a time for the cobwebs to be blown off and this defence to stamp its authority on things. I'm not sure, but they certainly appeared a little languid. I wouldn't call them complacent because that's not fair for a team who've just been crowned champions. But I guess in terms of the match odds for this match, I did think there was a sense of inevitability about really Liverpool last week. I think there possibly is about them this week too. They are still the winning machine, as Klopp calls them. I looked at the stats, and since the start of 2018-19, They've earned 199 points from 231, an 82% win rate, and they've only lost 4 times. And half of those games came when they'd already won the title. So they're fantasy numbers, really. They deserve to be fair and strong favourites in my eyes. I think the market is giving Chelsea a slightly bit more respect than it probably deserves at this stage. I still think there still needs to be time to see this team flourish. And I think I need evidence to suggest that they're closing the gap on Liverpool and City just yet. They did lose 5 of their 6 games against the top 2 last year. So there is improvement required. And I think that Liverpool minus quarter goal does start to be interesting. There was a bit of 1.7 about Liverpool off a scratch start, which really appealed to me earlier in the week. It's gone now. But I do think the goals route is the way to play this. You talked about the Champions League final, which didn't go away. I think there was probably circumstances around that, but probably, we kind of considered at the time, but I don't think are appropriate in this game. A kind of one-off league game. Sorry, not a one-off league game, but a regular league game. Liverpool 6 of 9 away games against the top 10 last year went overs. They scored in 8 of those. Chelsea kept 2 clean sheets at home against the top half under Lampard. 7 of 10 against the top 6 went overs. BTTS banked in 3 of 4 against Liverpool and City. And take City out of the equation, and these 2 teams featured at the top end for total expected goals and total XG from open play last year too. So, it's all set up to me to be a fun, attacking, exciting game. I think the edges with Liverpool, but the bets with goals.
So we'll come back to you in a second, Mark, and we'll just talk about maybe the different goal angles we can get in on here. But Adrian, to you first. I think I could definitely sense a lot of agreement with what you were saying there, Mark. We look at Chelsea on Monday night. I mean, look, Mark touched on it there. There's got to be a betting in period for these players. I mean, I did, Havertz especially was a bit quiet, but look, it's more or less his first game with Chelsea. You've got to allow for that.
I wouldn't be alarmed at Kai Havertz's performance. He's a class act. I didn't actually think that Lampard used him properly in that game. He was more on the right-hand side. For me, Kai Havertz plays off the front man. I think Havertz in behind Werner is the way forward. And I also think that Christian Pulisic is a massive player. He's become that for Chelsea, that line breaker. We saw the impact he had in that crazy 5-3 game at Anfield earlier on this summer. Christian Pulisic, he's 50-50 at the moment, I think, to be fit enough to start. If he makes the 11 and if he's good to go, I think that gives Chelsea a real leg up here, because the way he travels with the ball caused them massive problems last time out. I'm looking at Werner in this game, and I'm looking at that high line of Liverpool. They can't help it. It's the way they play. They squeeze up, don't they? Congest the midfield, make things tight, but it leaves space in behind them. And if Chelsea, from turnovers, can just clip early passes in behind, Werner will be on the shoulder. He will be on the shoulder. He will be on the shoulder of Gomez, even Van Dijk. He'll run in behind either fullback. I don't think 3 of the 4 at the back aren't playing well. Gomez, Van Dijk, and Alexander-Arnold not sharp at the moment. And Werner, I looked at his goals from last season for Leipzig. 12 of 28 came from pretty much 1v1s, where he's run through onto passes. 4 of those times he went round the keeper, and we saw he tried to do that at Brighton. So Werner is tailor-made to hurt Liverpool, in my opinion. So look, you can lay Liverpool at 2.29. You look at the history books and you think, wow, that's a dangerous thing to do. But I think this is a game Chelsea can attack. Remember, they scored 3 against them at Anfield. They scored twice in a win in the FA Cup, albeit against a weakened Liverpool side last year. So there'll be no inferiority complex from Chelsea. And Lampard, of course, after that little bust up with Klopp, I think he'll fire his team up for this one. I'm expecting fireworks.
Okay, and a real Bundesliga feel about this Chelsea attack as well. Obviously, with Pulisic spending so much time in Borussia Dortmund. Mark, I just want to go back into the goals angle for a second. So I think there's kind of differing views there on the match side, but I just want to bring this up on screen again right now. And this total that you referred to at the start of the week, 2.75. No, it's displayed on screen in Matchbook as over 2.5/3.0. That means half of your bet is on 2.5, as you can see here, and half is on 3.0. Mark, is that the better way in, even at this price? And obviously there's a small bit of margin here because it's early in the week we're recording this at 1.78, so it probably should flatten down about 1.8, 1.1, Mark.
Yeah, it is for me, Sully. I think you know me well enough by now to play it slightly more cautious and a bit more pragmatic in my approach. And I think with the over 2 3/4, the fact that you are getting half stakes profit if there is 3 goals exactly appeals to me. We always want to make money when we're betting, and occasionally, you have to take a slightly less line to get that. Over 3, you need 4 or more to bank your money. 4 or more to actually win some money. 3 3 exactly to bank it. So to me, there's more appeal there in taking the lower line to hopefully win a bit of cash than probably being a bit more adventurous and hoping for a really open field game, because
it's a long season, Mark. It's a long season.
Exactly. And by that 5-3, there's been a lot of 2-1s between these kind of games.
Yeah.
If you look at the top 6 last season, so that's the way I see it. More of a 2-1 than a 3-3 or a 2-2.
Me too.
Yeah, and let's not kid ourselves. I don't think this is a game we want to be sitting down on Sunday afternoon after backing unders and hiding behind the sofa kind of thing, right? So let's move on, gentlemen. Let's move back to Monday night, and we're going to take a look at Manchester City's first game this season. Current betting, they make the trip to Molineux, 6.6. You can back the Wolves. They're at 6.6 in the match odds. Whoa, that's a big price. Manchester City at just under 1.55. The draw 4.4. Wolves getting a goal start. You can back that at good odds against 2.01, and the total there is, as we talked about a while ago, similar to Liverpool game, is 2.75. Adrian, first one. I think you were kind of like half right on Wolves last night, because you saw the second half performance against Sheffield United. I think you were kind of hoping that would be the performance in the first half and would have allowed Sheffield United our way in. But, the Wolves definitely tired in the second half. But what are you making of them in this one? Because they have obviously a pretty favourable record against Manchester City. Obviously, they overturned that 2-goal lead last year to win 3-2. Yeah, a big price on this one.
But very big price. I think it's quite a tempting price, considering it's City's first game. We don't really have a guide, do we, on Manchester City's form because of the lack of sort of public friendlies that they've had. So Wolves at that price, I think, are tempting. They surprised me in a positive way. I didn't think they'd be as sharp from the off as they were against Sheffield United. I mean, what a dream start. They could have had the third as well inside the first 10 minutes. So well played to Wolves, especially with those two sort of two different wing backs. We had Marcel and Traore. I think Traore is wasted at wing back. I think we might see him pushed up in this game, and they make an alteration there. Because Traore, remember, was the guy that put City to the sword at the Etihad in that famous 2-0 win. We know the pattern of the game. City are going to dominate the ball, and Wolves will look to strike them hard and fast on the counter-attack. And that's the way they want to play. They had less of the ball against Sheffield United as well. I think 44% of possession, Wolves. So it'll be the kind of game they want. So I can see them causing them problems. But for me, Wolves in these type of games will be really solid. They'll look to set up with that back three. It will turn into a back five, and they'll want to slow down the waves of Manchester City's attacks before finding Jimenez and Podence and Traore on the break. It's a fascinating game. I certainly think Wolves have got a chance here, given they did the double over them last year. You got to remember the game at Molineux, the keeper was sent off very early, wasn't he? So that sort of skewed it a little bit. But no, I'm leaning towards a tighter game here. I know that the last one at Molineux was full of goals, and that City will come out trying to score goals. I just feel that Wolves will look to soak things up, and I think they're capable actually of making this a tight game. So I'll be looking at a low scoring match, possibly a low scoring draw. 1-1 is where I'm sort of heading with this. Potentially City nicking it by 1-0. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be a goal fest.
Mark, it's tough to kind of decode this Manchester City's team. They finished the relaunch start and such. There's 21 goals in 5 games towards the end. They were absolutely on fire. Adrian touched on it there. We haven't had any kind of pre-season games, so to speak. So you kind of have to tread a bit carefully here, Mark. But it's a kind of hard to argue against a kind of a tight game here, and maybe the unders could be an angle.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with nearly everything Adrian said, really, especially on the Wolves side of things. I think with City, it is difficult. It's their first outing since that Champions League exit where, they did dominate the game, but defensively, again, they fell down. Aguero's absent again. We're still not sure about Laporte's availability. He's been doubtful because he's been in quarantine with COVID, which is obviously a big miss. I know they spent big money on Nathan Ake, who is an upgrade on what they've already got elsewhere. But I know we kind of seen City. We've seen this kind of performance from them many times now, where they can dominate possession, create plenty of chances, but for whatever reason, struggle in both boxes. And their title challenge fell down against the top 7 last year. They only won 4 games and lost 7 of those games. So, they need to improve, especially away from the Etihad. 5 defeats and 6 against that same bracket. 2 clean sheets in 12. as well. They conceded twice or more on 8 occasions. To me, if Laporte is missing, that's a big concern because their win rate drops by 20% when he's missing. Their goals against increased by half a goal per game, and clean sheets are down from 55% to 35%. So, whilst now there's no confirmation whether he's going to play, that's concerning. Dig down into the handicap market, if you like, because in the 34 Premier League games he's missed, City have won by 2 goals or more in just 5 of 21 when they've conceded a goal without him. So those kind of numbers suggest to me that Wolves are potentially a play here with a 1.25 goal start. City only actually mustered 5 shots on target in the 180 minutes against Wolves last season. I know it should be worth mentioning that De Bruyne missed the match in Manchester. Aguero had to come off after that Ederson sending off at Molineux as well. So they were handicapped a little bit. But you look at Wolves' record since promotion against Arsenal twice, then Chelsea, Spurs, Liverpool and United in their first year. And then against United, City, Liverpool and Chelsea last season, they restricted their opponents to just 3 shots on target or fewer, which is really quite remarkable and kind of unparalleled really outside of the big six in the Premier League. So they know how to keep it tight. They know how to keep teams at bay, look to the centre halves to really be solid and block everything that comes their way. So for me, I looked at Wolves with plus a goal and a quarter. I know there has been money for it this week. I think it was still around sort of 1.8-ish.
Yeah, we'll bring it up on screen there, Mark, while you're talking about it. But it's about 1.75 at the moment. Again, there is a small bit of margin in this market because we are more or less 4 days away from this game. So check back. You should be able to get probably the 1.81 mark.
Yeah. And what is Pep Guardiola going to do about their fragility on the counter attack? Is he going to come up with some kind of new tactical shape? I wonder, because it continues to hurt them, doesn't it? If you expose those centre halves on breakaways, City are regularly in trouble, and Wolves know that. So I think Wolves at that price are a good bet, and the draw I notice is 4.4, and I think that's appealing. I think that's a decent price. There were no draws, were there, in the Premier League on the opening weekend? I wonder whether that might change this time around.
It may just level out. It's a funny opening weekend. All right, guys. I'm not sure if we have some there. Maybe one of those to wait and see, especially with Laporte's injury news as we head towards Monday. But again, like I said, it is probably more or less 4 days away, so a lot of time to be looking at that in the meantime. Right, let's move on to Southampton against Tottenham. And Adrian, you were very cautious on Tottenham last weekend with good reason, so I'll just stay with you here for this one when we talk about this. I'll bring up the betting here first of all. Southampton you can currently back at Matchbook at 3.28, Tottenham Hotspur 2.37, the draw 3.42. You can back Southampton getting a quarter of a goal start at 1.97, and the total is 2.5. And Adrian, both these teams lost by a goal last weekend, but I think if you were watching the Southampton and Palace game, if you're a Southampton fan, you definitely take more positives from that rather than if you're a Tottenham fan taking positives from that 1-0 home loss to Everton.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Although I thought Southampton were very shaky at the back. He made a change with the centre half at half time. Jack Stevens got absolutely torn to shreds on the break by Will Zaha. He just looked a cart horse, and I'm thinking Son Heung-min up against him potentially in this game. I think that could spell trouble for Stevens. So and Southampton last night were beaten at home to Brentford. He played 10 of the 11 that started at Palace, and they were beaten by the Bees. So they're not in a good place, Southampton, really, when you think about it. 2 games, no goals, 2 defeats. Spurs, as bad as they were against Everton, and they were very mediocre, weren't they? Particularly in midfield, they got outplayed. I don't know. I feel there might be a reaction here, and I look at the Tottenham forward line, and I would fancy them against Southampton, who don't have a brilliant home record, do they? Under Hasenhüttl, or going back a long way actually. Their home form is patchy, to say the least. So no, I think I would rather look at how fragile Southampton have been at the back here, and that's why I would lean towards Tottenham Hotspur. But that said, I don't think Dyer and Alderweireld were that watertight themselves. So maybe we'll see goals.
Mark, what are you thinking in this one? Goals might be the play, all right, because Adrian touched on it there regards Alderweireld and Dyer. They just don't really look up to it like that. Dyer, especially as a centre back.
But by the way, I got a stat. Southampton against Spurs, they always score against Spurs. So this could be a both teams to score type of game.
Okay.
Last 11 meetings in all competitions, 9 of those in the Premier League, Southampton have scored. So Spurs might need to score twice to win this game.
Marco here, what say you?
Yeah, I wouldn't put anyone off both teams to score. You look back at last season, 15 of Spurs' 19 away, saw both sides score. 12 of Saints at home also did as well. But this is one of the few games where I've actually kind of changed my opinion, or kind of taken a step back, actually, just this morning, based on what Adrian was talking about last night with Southampton against Brentford, because I looked at this game immediately and thought Saints plus a quarter goal is a standout bet of the weekend. But clearly something isn't right there at the moment. There's clear tension and friction between Ralph Hasenhüttl and potentially the board and even his players after the first 2 performances. I think against Palace, yes, they had 71% of the ball. Yes, they had 9 shots on target to Palace's 5, and Gaeta made a few fine saves. But Saints looked subdued. They looked off the pace. I think their XG reflected that as well, but they lacked incision, lacked a bit of quality. Again, as Adrian says, picked 10 players again on Wednesday night, probably to get some minutes in the players' feet. But they didn't show up really at all. And you listen to his post-match press conference, and it's really quite alarming. Really, he said the players returned to pre-season in poor condition. He refused to sort of downplay rumours about Danny Ings leaving as well. And I get the impression that it wasn't just a message for the media. He looked really peeved by the whole situation that they're in. And I think the prices have reflected that. They've drifted a little bit since overnight, and I still think they probably are slightly too big. There's not. I disagree with Adrian in terms of Spurs being a potential opportunity here, because I think Saints had their number last year, even with Mourinho, but their opening day performance was really quite alarming. They're also going to Bulgaria on Thursday night to play in Europa League tie. I'm not sure what the squad is like for that, but Mourinho himself is really critical of his team as well. Called them lazy, called them unfit, questioned their mental space and resolve. So 2 coaches here have kind of given damning indictments of their teams in the past 7 days, and that's always a bit alarming for me. How are those players going to react? It's not, I guess, in 2020 some players will react better than others, but I thought they were so passive against Everton, unadventurous. A few flourishes from Doherty, but I want him to playing wing back, not right back, to get the best out of him. Højbjerg was poor in his debut, so I think the vulnerables offensively and on the flanks as well. So I know Saints did struggle at St Mary's last year. They improved a little bit after lockdown behind closed doors, so perhaps there's a bit of wriggle room. And just on Spurs, actually, I just look at that price. They won 4 away games last season at Newcastle, Villa, West Ham and Wolves. Only the Wolves game were they odds against in that game. They ranked 10th according to XG under Mourinho, posting a negative process. I know the Gareth Bale move might come over the line, but I don't expect him to feature either. So a slight nudge to Saints, but very alarmed by midweek and last week. And I think goals are probably the better play.
Even Gareth Bale there, we'll touch on that, so Adrian, just for a second, even your thoughts on that one. I mean, like the guy, for me, like how many games he played even in the last 2 years? I mean, as a player, when he left North London to the player coming back at 31 years of age, it's a big ask for him just to kind of turn it on again, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm conflicted on this, because he's an unbelievably gifted player, and he will produce great moments, I'm sure, if he does return to Spurs. But how often is he going to play? Because of his fitness issues? I mean, it's a long time since he was fully fit and free of injuries. And what about the motivation? I mean, he's gone a bit stale. He's had so long spent on the golf course or not in competitive action. I think it's going to be a shock to his system getting up to speed.
Getting up to speed in a Mourinho system. I was kind of trying to rack my head in my brain last night. I actually had it in my head that he did at least one season at the Bernabeu with Mourinho, but they didn't actually cross over at all.
I think what will happen, we might see him on the right. So I mean, look, on paper, Bale on the right, Son on the left, and Kane up top is a dream ticket, isn't it? But yeah, you just wonder, whether injuries might scupper his influence and the style of football under Jose. But look, Spurs fans will get excited, and I understand that. A word of warning though, it's not the Gareth Bale that they remember, because he used to score 20 goals a season. He used to make over 10 assists. It's a long time since he was hitting those figures. Yeah.
So what are we thinking here, guys? Is as a betting angle, is BTTS, and I actually don't have the price here available at the moment, but if it's at the 1.7, 1.8 mark even, what do you think there, Mark? Is that probably the play here if you're going to get in at all in this game?
Yeah, right now it's the play for me. Both
Yeah.
teams to score at 1.8. I had a little shop around that's available on the market, so should be there. But I wanted to back Saints. I really do. I think there's a lot of more negatives towards Spurs, but the last two performances, even early season, has really alarmed me, especially Hasenhüttl's comments if you read them after.
Yeah, and there's just plenty of holes you can pick on both sides here for sure. Right, let's move on to the last main game that we are featuring today. Manchester United make their return, just like Manchester City, of course. As you can see, prices on screen right now. Manchester United, they're currently at 1.34 on the match. Wow, that's fairly short. 10.8 Palace. The draw is 5.7. Palace getting a goal and a half start at 1.88, and the total is 2.75. Mark, obviously, Manchester United finished Premier League season 14 games unbeaten. They just about got over the line for that Champions League place. We then saw them go to Germany, and they just looked absolutely exhausted. They've had a couple of weeks off here. It's hard to predict the first game, obviously, but what is the market telling you here? Obviously, United again all of a sudden are becoming a very, very public team.
Yeah, they are. I think we can all sort of look back to when Bruno Fernandes arrived as possibly the catalyst to change their campaign and change how they were perceived from outside. I know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was top of the sack race market after they lost to Burnley, and obviously Fernandes has helped inspire a change of scenery there around obviously Paul Pogba returning as well to full fitness, and then the emergence of Mason Greenwood as well, who was always there but kind of really came on there at the final furlong as well. But I think at Old Trafford last season they were very strong, 1 undefeated 17, which was the Palace game, which they were dominating in. Obviously quite unfortunate to lose that, but you're always taking a bit of a gamble with teams coming into their first game, players' fitness, as we've seen in the last 7 days. Are they going to hit the ground running? You need kind of a bit of luck on that in that kind of sense, unless you're inside in the training paddock. And I kind of look at United and think, yeah, they probably are being overrated, but also at the same point, I'm not getting ideas up on my station with Palace either, because I looked at them last weekend and the win was excellent. It was very typical of Roy Hodgson to get a victory out of that, playing a patched up defence with central midfielders and centre half, and difficult to break down, resilient, well drilled, comfortable without the ball.
They have 5, is that right? They had 5 defenders on the injury list last weekend.
Yeah, and Cahill, Tompkins and Van Aanholt are still out for this. Sacco returned in midweek in the Cup as well, so that's a big bonus for them. But it's a defence that does concede goals when they go to the Big Six. I know they've got this kind of perceived attitude as getting results, and I know the last 4 trips to Manchester they've avoided defeat, which is remarkable, really. But you look at the underlying stats, and they've been dominated all those matches. So there has to be a slight bit of luck there. There is method between the madness as well, obviously. But they've conceded twice or more in 7 of their last 8 trips to the Premier League elite. They're not as watertight as we might think. I think there's potentially something exciting building there with the Batshuayi signing. There's talk of Ben Rama or say Samuel joining as well. Eze's already on the books. Zaha looks back to something close to himself. I know he's trying to angle for a move away as well, but they'll be happy to contain and counter. So it's all kind of comes down to United really here. And again, I kind of go back to what sort of state United are in, because Palace, they lost 5 of 7 games at the top 7 last season by 2 goals or more. At top 6 teams under Roy Hodgson, 12 defeats in 17, 9 of those by 2 goals or more. And actually those games have featured plenty of goals too. 13 of 17 went over 2.5, 10 went over 3.5 as well. So kind of goes against what you kind of anticipate of a Palace team to be strong and stable defensively and nicking something on the break. So it's kind of boring to say, but there's no real bet for me here. If I had to, it would be United -1.5, but there's just too many unknowns.
But you don't have to, Mark. That's the difference. You don't have to. That's okay. That's okay.
It's fine. I'll walk away right now and hand over to Adrian, because it's not a game I'm looking forward with any sort of relish.
I'm never going to force you into a bet. Adrian, what are you thinking on this one? Is there any kind of angle?
I'm taking it. I'm going to go, and I'm going to go in. Going to go in with. Well, I think that is the bet. That is exactly the one that Mark highlighted. United on the -1.5, just over odds against 202. So I would fancy United strongly. Obviously, there's no gauge in terms of form, but we know the pattern of the game. We know that Palace will sit in and United will come out and wave after wave. And I don't know. I feel the first test of the season, they've been sitting there waiting. They might just explode into action. And there's a bit of competition for places at the moment. Van der Beek's come in, of course. Is he going to rival Pogba? Are they going to find a way to play somehow him and Fernandes, and the others? So it's a difficult one. And with Greenwood as well, is he going to come in from sort of off the naughty step to play? And if he does, is he going to be really fired up to prove a point? I just feel that United might come out of the blocks flying here. They're a flawed team. We know that. They're not perfect, but they're way, way better than Crystal Palace.
Donny van de Beek's a good signing as well, isn't he? He's going to add a bit more protection to that midfield.
I think so, yeah. And I think he'll be really useful in the bigger games, and he might replace Pogba in some of those really tough games, because he's a box-to-box guy that will defend and contribute going forward. Pogba might be more suitable to a match like this, where he's got that skill and magic to open up a defence. I mean, Fernandes is going to play. You need a defensive midfielder in there as well. So you wonder will they change the system and have a sort of narrow 4 with 2 up front this season. I think that's an option for them that I think we might see trialled in the coming weeks at Manchester United. But yeah, no, I would fancy them to dominate this game. Palace, by the way, only scored 16 goals on the road last year, one of the lowest in the division. They're not prolific away from Selhurst Park. So yeah, I see this as a 3-0, possibly 4-0, 4-1. So yeah, I would go in on United.
And I think there, Mark, you touched on it there. I think that Van de Beek signing kind of went under the radar, because I think there was just a sense of, Sancho is coming to Old Trafford this off-season, and that was who they were getting. But he's actually a proper player. He's like, if you look at Ajax the last couple of years, he's a serious player. But okay, so we'll move on from that. Manchester United -1.5. I like it any age, and I'm going with you on that one.
No, this is the bet I outlined as well,
yeah.
Sully. It's just, I think Adrian's made a very strong case for it to sort of probably tip me over the edge there.
For sure, over the edge. I love it. Yeah, okay, I love it. Let's do a quick bet recap of those 4 games, gentlemen, just before we move on to the next section. So we're going to take the over 2.75 in Chelsea against Liverpool. We're going to take both teams to score in Southampton versus Tottenham. And yes, we're going to take Manchester United -1.5 to win by 2 or more at home to Crystal Palace. Right, let's move on to the EFL and other bets. Adrian, East Anglian double last week. Obviously, with the way you kind of were sweating on Norwich a bit, but they're obviously the better team there. It took a while to get through. No issues with Ipswich and that front. But where are you looking this weekend for the value across the EFL?
Yeah. Norwich weren't wholly convincing, but yeah, they got the job done. It's a big win for Norwich, by the way. They needed it after their losing streak. I'm going with a couple of boring games here, a couple of under 2.5 goal shouts. I'm looking at Forest Cardiff in the Championship. It's the early kickoff. Okay. Both have had poor starts. Forest defended really badly against Queen's Park Rangers. Joe Worrell, who's a big man, he's a key man for them. He's been linked with the move to Burnley, actually, if Tarkowski goes. I just wonder whether his head's been turned a bit. They've not scored in their first couple of games, Forest. So they've got off to a very indifferent start. Cardiff have had a nightmare, smashed by Northampton, beaten at home by Sheffield Wednesday. They've sacked a player. We don't know what's gone on there with Mendes Lang. It's not great for either. So therefore, I'm going with both managers here being very cautious and setting up for a clean sheet mentality just to stabilise. I'm
going to give you a bit of credit here, right? Because if somebody is listening to this on Thursday morning, they're seeing under 2.5. Just for a bit of context, under 2.5 now has been absolutely smashed. But you did say this in our WhatsApp group. I think it was on yesterday, and there was plenty of under 2.5 there. So just in case you think people are thinking, he's giving out 1.6 shots here.
Okay,
that very much was available. I know it may get back, or maybe a kind of move on the over, but that has been gone. But look, there's nothing against that. But you did call it yesterday when the market was very liquid. Yeah,
I was unaware of that, but look,
you probably moved today. Don't be bluffing us, like.
And Forest, by the way, Forest matches last season averaged the least amount of goals in the Championship, only 2.35. So look, neither side, particularly Forest, are involved in thrillers. And the other one that I would shout at being a very dull game would be Newport against Barrow. I mean, Barrow have been involved in 2 0-0ers and a 1-1. And they were both penalties. There's not been an open play goal in 3 matches for Barrow. Have been really tight. And in Newport's case, they've had 4 matches, and none of the matches have been over 2 goals. And again, Newport at home last year, the matches at home averaged 1.74 goals per game. It was not the place to go much. Yeah, Rodney Parade was not the place for goals last season. So look, I'm just looking at those 2 games and thinking, look, I'm not expecting too much goal mouth action. We'll see, but that's where I'm going with this week's EFL tips.
There's only one other person I know on this planet would know about Newport's home record and about Barrow, and that's the guy at the very bottom of the screen, Mark. Mark, go ahead. Where are you going elsewhere? Any thoughts on what Adrian suggested?
Nodding in agreement at both. Obviously, took a keen interest in Forest last weekend playing QPR, and Rangers didn't have to be that great to beat them. Lewis Grabber missed a couple of reasonable opportunities for Forest, but I expected a lot more from them with Luke Freeman coming in, like Lyle Taylor signing as well. But Lamucci, by all reports, is under major pressure there already. So that's one to watch. And Harris was absolutely scathing about Cardiff's performance, losing at home to Sheffield Wednesday, lacking creativity. So, two big ticks in the box there. For me, I looked at Spain this weekend. Granada with a surprise package in Spain last season. They qualified for Europe immediately after promotion. Were a real breath of fresh air. They started really well, finished really well. The middle part wasn't that great, but they really did their business against the kind of best of the rest, really, or the less of the rest, you should probably say. 14 wins and earning 48 points from 26 games to rate at 1.85 outside of the teams below them in the table. So really solid stuff at their home. 9 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats at home against the teams below them as well in the table. 7 clean sheets along the way. They turned over Barcelona before they fell into crisis earlier in the season, and they conceded very few goals as well. So Diego Martinez is still head coach there. They've kept the bulk of that squad together. The spine and foundations are still in place. They edged out Athletic last weekend, 1-0. It was a pretty dour game, but their odds against to beat Alaves, which does appeal to me, an Alaves team who were very close to relegation last year, just survived by 3 points. They're now under Pablo Machin's guidance. He's a coach with a very defined way of playing, a 3-5-2 wing-backs. He prefers a longer-term project to kind of work his magic, but I think it's going to be pretty difficult for him because the squad doesn't necessarily suit his ideals and how they play on paper, at least. So they were pretty poor last week. They're weaker this time around on paper as well in terms of their squad, and their road record is dreadful. 13 defeats in 19 last year. I think Granada, a touch of odds against, is where to go. Another one,
2.1 currently. Yeah, of course. If you have one, lay it on.
Bundesliga, great to have the Bundesliga.
Bundesliga's back. Yes, you obviously know that's my new favorite league since April when there was nothing else on and it kept all our sanity.
Yeah,
and it was great fun. It's a shame so many key players have left the league in the summer, but that's how it is really in Germany. Cologne are in a bit of a disarray off the field. Former players and coaches really sort of speaking out about the direction of the club. Supporters are unhappy. They've lost their 2 leading goal scorers from last season in John Cordoba this week, and Mark Hoot has gone back on loan gone back from his loan, I should say, to Schalke as well. He was really creative. Cordoba was outstanding in the forward position. Sebastian Anderson's a decent replacement, but he's only just come in. They started dreadfully last year and finished appallingly. So really worried about them defensively. They were a shambles, conceding over 2 goals per game on average. I think they're worth opposing against Hoffenheim, who have largely kept the squad together, finished 6th, I think, in the table. That's despite losing Julian Nagelsmann the year before. I expected a massive downturn. They steadied the ship pretty well, lost 3 times away from home. I think in the draw no bets, a sort of scratch 0 start, they appealed. I think they're unbeaten against the bottom 9, scored twice or more in 7 of those games as well. And Kramaric is fit as well, and he's absolutely key. So, I think Hoffenheim, a shade of odds on, off a scratch start, is a decent play in Germany.
Good man. The Bundesliga is back. Almost forgot about that, actually. Let's move on to weekend best bets. There's plenty there to get stuck into, but if I had to give you just your best bet for the whole weekend, Adrian, you want to jump in there first, mate?
Well, probably the best of the ones that we've referenced. I think Chelsea-Liverpool with the overs. Okay. I think that's a good bet to take. For me, just a couple of ones that I've highlighted from elsewhere. Newcastle-Brighton. Okay, I don't think this is going to be number 1 on Match of the Day. Just 4 goals in the last 6 Premier League meetings between these two sides. Both matches were 0-0 last year. I just don't see a hatful of goals here. I think 1.87 on under 2 and 2.5. So it's 2.5. Yeah. So I think that's a shout. And an easy bet for me. And this is more exciting because I like to bet on winners, don't you? I much prefer to.
Well, actually, we don't actually care once they're winners.
True. But I like to cheer a team on, shall we say? Okay, I'm going to go with, on the basis that West Brom are poor, really poor. I think they're going to struggle this year. Same as Fulham. They're going to get beaten by Everton, who look really good. And Arsenal always seem to beat West Ham at home. Moyes has got a terrible record at Emirates Stadium. Everton and Arsenal double. You can get that at 2.38, which I think compared to some of the other bets that we've discussed that have been there or thereabout, you think, it's only just odds against. I think 2.38 on that double is quite generous, and that's one I think I'll be taking.
2.38 at Matchbook, nonetheless, because we obviously offer these multiple bets which weren't available on the exchange in the past. 2.38, I like that one. Mark, best bet of the weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to bring the mood down, but it's been quite a somber week. It's been a tough week in the EFL for some clubs. Macclesfield, they've just fallen out and they've been wound up now as well. Soon more could be following them, and Southend certainly probably top of that list. Actually, at the moment, they owe 500 grand to the HMRC. Remain in the transfer embargo. That's been adjourned until October, so they've got a little bit more time. But there's very, very little positives, as Adrian will tell you, around Southend right now. They're fielding what's essentially an under-23 side, stuffed 4-0 at Harrogate last weekend, or at home, I should say, against Harrogate last weekend. Their new manager, Mark Molesley's got a great reputation in the lower leagues, and by all accounts, he's been a breath of fresh air for that club. But there's only so much he can do, really. They fielded the youngest squad in their club's history against Harrogate, 7 players, 22 or younger. He said quite literally it was men against boys, and that's really quite worrying for their upcoming games. They go to Carlisle, a very long journey for EFL teams. Considering the sort of money situation, I'm not sure how they're travelling or how they're staying, but 1,000 fans are being allowed into the ground for Carlisle, one of these pilot games. So there's a bit of a feel-good feeling there. They've had a lot of turnover, a lot of transition in terms of players this summer. So it might take time for them to get going. And certainly if you look at last weekend's loss at Cambridge, Carlisle lost 3-0. It sounded a lot worse than it was. They conceded 3 goals from just 5 shots against and 3 on target. So they did create a little bit. I do expect them to get better. Certainly look at that squad and think they're capable of much more. It might take time, and this might be the perfect game for them to sort of get their season up and running. It really should be, considering the state of Southend at the moment, which is really sad, quite worrying for the future. But there's been a lot of money for Carlisle since we kind of looked at this earlier in the week. They've gone from about 2.1 into about 1.9. I make them a bet down to about 1.8, 1.75. So that's one to look out for. Yeah,
no, completely. I played for both, by the way. I had a loan spell at Carlisle. Not a particularly happy loan spell, but but yeah, it's horrendous to see what's happening at Southend at the moment. Desperately need some fresh investment to get themselves out of trouble. But from a footballing perspective, Mark's bang on. I think that's a good price for Carlisle to beat Southend this weekend.
Yeah, like you said, Mark, that's some horrendous journey.
Tell me about it. Yeah,
in Scotland.
I mean, I used to sometimes attempt to come back, after a game, and it was barely worth it because I weren't getting back until the early hours of Sunday morning. So it's not an easy one. And if they are travelling on the day Southend, that price looks even sweeter.
Yeah, leaving at 4 or 5 o'clock.
I mean,
in the morning,
if you sometimes I try and say to people who probably aren't as well versed as potentially you, Sully, is that when you look at these odds, just flip them into percentages and look at this game from a percentage aspect. And are Carlisle likely to win this game more often than 45%? You've got to say yes. And, translate those odds into the percentage probability, and Carlisle should be closer to I should have said 55% earlier. Should be closer to 60 at least to win this game, in my eyes at least. So yeah, for me it's I wouldn't say a home banker, it never is after 1 week of action, but hopefully as close to it as possible.
It's shaping up that way for sure. Okay, gentlemen, we're almost out of time. That's it from us. Thank you, gentlemen, as ever. Hopefully we get a couple of more winners this weekend. I think there's plenty there to get stuck into for sure. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to on the Matchbook Betting Podcast, we'll be back again as ever next Thursday. So best of luck with your bets for the weekend ahead, and we will talk to you next week.